Hi, Lily.
Hi, Scott.
We are two single parents. My name's Scott, and I'm a single dad to a preteen boy.
And my name is Lily, and I am a single parent to teen twins, boy and a girl.
Oh, and they have amazing hair. We were just talking about how
too.
amazing the hair of your kids have. And my son's got amazing hair too, so I'm just jealous all around.
Yeah, well, deal with it, Scott.
I feel like as my hair starts disappearing, their hair grows in strength. Well, today we are going to be talking about whether or not we can leave those well-coiffed kids home alone, and whether it's legal and whether we're about to go to jail. So stick around and find out if we're going to the slammer.
I'm Lily, single mom to teen twins.
Father! I'm recording in here!
And I'm Scott, single dad to a preteen boy.
Dad!
It's under the sink!
We're two old friends trying to navigate single parenting.
And spending the whole time thinking, I hope I don't fuck this up. We're going to be talking all about whether or not we can leave our kids home alone. As single parents, this is a bigger deal, I think, even than with married parents, because your time is at a premium and you often don't have help. And I know I often don't have help. And sometimes you just need to go to the store and hope that the popo doesn't show up and take your kid away.
Yeah. Or surprise burglaries, or accidental fires, or an earthquake, whatever. Like, name the circumstance. I've thought about it. Yeah.
I love that. You know, you're thinking about how the world, I'm just thinking about the popo. I'm just thinking about the police.
Well, that is the biggest fear, for sure.
That is the big, I mean, society is way more to fear than the volcanoes. But first, there's something that we are going to try to do on this pod that I think is really important, especially for single parents, which is we're going to talk about a parenting fail that we had this week or recently, and we're going to give each other forgiveness.
Do you want me to go first?
Sure. Why don't you go first?
I fail a lot, and I think about failing a lot, so maybe that actually makes me a good parent, the fact that I think about it. But I recently had a fight with my daughter, and it wasn't even a fight. My kids are 17 now, and I love teenagers, and I love them in particular. But my the occasional attitude that comes with being a teenager can suck. So for a while, my daughter had been giving like short, cold answers, and I was just like annoyed with it. And instead of dealing with it, because there's only so many times you can be like, hey, can you say that nicely? Hey, can you do this? Hey, can you do... Just like, I'm like, I stopped responding and just like kind of started icing out, which is definitely a way that I learned to fight with her father when we were divorcing, and it was not great. You can recognize the pattern in reflection, but in the moment, it just felt like I was trying not to fight. Like that is what it felt like I was doing. Is like I am trying not to fight. I am trying not to fight. I don't want to do it. You know, anybody who's gone through a divorce knows there are lots of years of fighting. I'm done. I'm over it. So my son came up to us and he was like, hey, why are you mad? And I was like, I'm not mad. He's like, well, you should talk to her because you seem like you're really mad at her. And it like took me aback because I thought I was just being cool about it. I thought I was just keeping my cool, but it wasn't. And the thing that sucked is like, oh, what I'm trying to do in this post-divorce world is like just reset all of those bad relationship habits, emotional habits with them, because I don't want them to have them. But sometimes you see your own parents parenting reflected in your own parenting, and
yes.
This is like something that I feel like I genetically learned. It's just like it's like become the iceberg, and it's not great. Like, because I said, I'm not mad at her. Like, and I said back to my son, I was like, I'm not mad at her. What do you mean? And he's like, sure seems like you're mad at her. I was like, feels like you're mad. Okay. So, but that, like, and that's the exact same thing. Like, when my father does this, like, he and my stepmother still fight. Like, they've been married 50 years, almost. No, not quite, 40 years. And this is how they fight. They literally were just fighting like this last month. They won't speak to each other for weeks at a time because like my dad will just ice out and will not give in. And I saw myself doing that, and I was like, "Oh, I suck. That's my."
You don't suck. You don't suck. It is, God, beyond forgiven. It is something that like I think I can be the same way. It's that I think you've mentioned it this way before when we've talked about it. It's like you forget they're kids, and you forget that you're a parent, and you fight with them like you're both adults.
Totally. And especially at this age, like they're nearly adults and everything they do. Like I enjoy their company as whole adult beings, and they're still kids,
Especially with that, like kind of like the needs they have. I mean, if it makes you feel any better when you talk about icing out, my dad, when he would be mad at me, he wouldn't talk to me for months. And I still remember I got
as a child?
As a high schooler, and I love my dad. He was a great dad for the most part, but he had that same issue where he would get his feelings hurt. And when his feelings were hurt, or when he felt like he wasn't getting, listened to or respected or whatever, his answer was always, I'm going to punish you by not acknowledging you exist. That's my punishment is you don't get to interact with me.
That's so terrible.
I know, it was bad.
I literally talked about this in couples therapy. My therapist is like, that's called stonewalling. And it's definitely not fighting, but it is a terrible thing to do to somebody. And I was like, but I'm really good at it.
No, it's like, why are you pulling us away from our skills? I am skilled at this. I am very good at winning this fight. Because both times he did this to me. He did it to me twice. Both times I won, ultimately. I don't know if it's winning. I outlasted him. And he eventually, he wanted to be my dad more than he wanted to win. But it took time. We were both pretty stubborn. And it's the one thing I'm like, I'm not going to do that with my son. Not going to do that with my son. I did it with him for one day. You're not alone. I did it with him. Well, I mean, it was, I didn't ignore him. I just, I'm mad at you, so I'm not going to really
give you the love that I normally
not going to give you what I would normally do, which is,
oh my God, it's terrible when I hear you say it because it's exactly what I do. And it's awful.
But you know what? You recognized it. I recognized it. I haven't done it since, thankfully. Yeah. But like, you get to the end of the day, I'm like, I'm my dad. Shit. It's what you learned. You've had training your entire life on how to do this.
My dad and my brother haven't spoken. They've stonewalled each other since 1997.
There's a 1-9? It's a 1-9?
Back in the past century, in the 1900s, they've not spoken to each other. And it was the same kind of thing. It was like somebody got their feelings hurt. And one of them either said something or did something, but that both of them decided, I'm going to stonewall you. I'm not going to talk to you. I'm not going to give you attention. And neither one of them will give in. And at this point, it's like, there's no going back from that. And that's something that I dearly don't ever want to do.
Well, especially, you're a single parent. It's like, I mean, I have an only child. What am I going to not talk to my only child? Like, I mean, that is the props I give my dad in this conversation. When we talk about this, he was not willing to do that. His pride was not more important than his relationship. And so
that's good.
He would give
I guess.
in.
I still can't believe he didn't speak to his child for months. Yeah. But I can. Obviously, given my family history, I can't.
I know. I'm like, you can't believe that? It wasn't like 20 years. It was just months. It's easy. It was easy because his schedule was so crazy. He would leave before I woke up and like,
it feels so bad though. Like
it does. I mean, especially when and part of it I don't know if you went through this with your kids, and I haven't gone through it yet, but you can have such an adversarial relationship with your teen kids as it is.
Yeah.
That something tells me, and I could be rough. And something tells me that like it wasn't just the D on the science exam. It was
that you were a pain in the ass teenager.
Because I was a pain in the ass teenager.
Well, it's not even that. Like I don't have an adversarial relationship with my kids, and I feel really, really lucky about that. Yeah. Or at least I don't feel that. I mean, absolutely, they may feel different, but
they're like, she sucks. She's terrible. No, I know they don't say that.
The great thing about trying to parent the mistakes out of your kids is like you really correcting a lot in yourself. And I think it takes a lot of, and I'm not trying to pat myself on the back here. This is literally for every parent. When you realize you fucked up and do not want to do that again, it takes a lot of strength and bravery just to not like fall back into the habit that feels comfortable, that you learn and and try to do something different. And one of the things that, I've forced my kids to do since they were toddlers is to talk about what's wrong. My daughter is the one who is most like me, just wants to shut it all down. But it's, it's not healthy. I do that. It's not healthy. And we've got an entire generation of people who are our age who were taught the same thing. And I mean, I feel for our fathers who were never taught to have, and my father won't admit that why he won't talk to people is because his feelings are hurt. It's not possible.
It's entirely the hard candy shell on top of the soft gooey center. And
totally.
When I hear about what my granddad did to my dad, it was it's amazing what an amazing dad my dad ended up being. Because my dad was at dinner every night. It tells you the difference between the stuff you focus on and the stuff that's you can only focus on so much. And so he focused on being there and spending time, because
that's amazing.
The perfect test of my granddad. And my granddad lived with us when we were older, and he was a great grandfather, but he was a pretty crappy dad. And he taught my dad to ride a bike by putting him on a bike. They lived in hilly Yonkers. Yonkers is just one hill after another. They're at the top of the hill. He puts him on the bike, he pushes him, and then he goes in to watch TV. And my dad rockets down the hill on this bike that he had never ridden before. His dad had already gone inside, and he crashes and never gets on a bike again.
That's how my sister taught me to swim.
There you go. See, that's how we're trying to break that cycle.
We are.
Well, we break it. I mean, you could argue we've gone so far in the other direction sometimes, but
some of us generationally, yes, I agree.
Yes. I mean, we'll talk about that in a future episode. But it is, that is such a great point though. I love how you put it, where it's using these as an opportunity to correct yourself. Because it isn't just about how you parent. It's about how every relationship you have is. How do you communicate in a relationship?
Yeah.
Teaching yourself to be able to talk to your kids when you really just want to punish them with your silence is a way for you to not punish the next person you're dating, or punish your parents or punish your friends. And
it turns out you feel better that way.
I know. Who knew, man? It just, it's so, God, it's so,
personally, I'm proud that my son came to me and A, noticed something was wrong. It means he's emotionally attuned. B, said, you're acting like an asshole, fix it. And C, that when I confronted I didn't confront her. I asked her, I was is there something going on that you want to talk about? She's like, no, what's wrong with you? And we started screaming and crying at each other that. We ended it really healthily. I love you. There's nothing wrong with me. We're mad. We get this happens, that happens. Let's move on. And that never would have happened with me or my parents. Never. And while it is a fail that I acted like an asshole, I think I'll take it as a win. It's a lesson, at least.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't even say you're forgiven, because you've already kind of learned the lesson and internalized it.
I'll take that.
There you go.
Well, tell me how you failed.
My fail was, so I coach my son's baseball team, and we didn't have umpires today. It was yesterday. We didn't have any umpires because they're all seventh graders and they get paid $20 to show up and umpire these games. And apparently they just all had something better to do this Saturday, and nobody showed up. So I had to umpire. And that meant I stood behind the pitcher and I kind of called balls and strikes. And I have learned that very quickly that there is no way to undermine yourself with the team that you coach than to umpire against them and call balls and strikes against them. They started a chant calling me the worst ump in the world. They're like, ump is blind. And I'm like, I am coaching your team. He's like,
that
ump is blind.
So good for them to be able to talk to you like that.
Oh, it's it's like tearing that. But that's not my fail. That was just my burden. I'm just sitting here taking one for the team, because I'm like, why did none of the other coaches want to do it? Because it sounds fun to go up there and call balls and strikes. And I had never coached before. They had all coached before. So they all knew not to go up there and ump. I had no idea.
Oh,
and
gosh.
so they're just, no, ump is blind. There's one kid that felt bad. He's like, guys, let's go easy on him. And they're like, nope. He's like, oh, okay. Ump is blind.
Are you taking them out for pizza afterwards or no?
Oh, no. What I did was I didn't talk to them the rest of the day. Just shut. No, I'm kidding.
I was going to say.
I'm kidding. No. But it is a weird feeling because when you're undermined around kids, it's like hard with a group of kids, especially like preteens. They're all like middle schoolers and fifth graders. And I'm like,
worst age.
Yeah, you lose all your credibility and you don't know what to do. You've been completely undermined. I'm like, I don't know what to do here.
Yeah.
But the worst was when I had to call my own son out on strikes, and because he struck out, and the second pitch, I just didn't see it, and it looked like a strike to me, and I called it as a strike, and I was told later by my other coach, he's like, "Ooh, that was cold." I'm like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "That hit the plate. That was not a strike." I'm like, "I thought it was a strike, but I couldn't see because I'm right behind the pitcher, and so I just didn't see it right, and it looked like a strike out of his hand."
Wait, what do you mean you're behind the pitcher? The catcher.
Well,
okay.
Because no, they don't put you when you do coach umpire. You stand behind the pitcher because there's only one of you, and so you have to be able to see everything. They don't put you behind, and you don't have all the equipment on and stuff. So, foul tip to take your head off.
So you made a bad call on your own son to throw
on
him
my
out.
own son, and then it didn't strike him out, but then he threw a good pitch on the next pitch and struck him out. And as my son walked into the dugout, he just stared at me. He just had the 1,000-yard stare as he walks, just like, and I'm like, oh man, I'm gonna hear this tonight, man.
I was gonna say, I hope he ices you out.
Oh, he was. You know what? He is more adult than I am. He mentioned it once, and then he was fine.
What a good kid.
It was everybody else that wouldn't stop when they all came up behind me. Then because they all came out after that. They're like, "You cold, ump? You cold?" And they're all like, "You so cold." I was like, oh my God, I have no credibility with any of these kids, these evil children. Oh my gosh,
I'm so glad my kids don't play sports.
Oh man.
Totally your fault for making a call that you didn't see.
I know, but what am I going to do?
But I don't know that anybody else would have done anything different than that.
What's funniest about it is how I felt, because I felt like I just lost all control. Like, you lose credibility with these kids that you're supposed to be coaching.
Yep.
And you put yourself in a position and looking at the other coaches and they're like, yep, that's why I didn't do it.
Seriously. Oh my gosh.
Oh man. Well, I don't know if I need to be forgiven or not, or just given a stiff drink.
I forgive you, but I'm sorry for you.
Yeah, I know.
Like, hey, I'm sorry your kids maybe you're into sports, but like that, eating up so much for your weekend totally sucks. But being put in the position to have to call your son out, regardless, like even if you could see the call and made the right call, that's gotta suck. I'm sorry.
It hurts. It hurts. Thank God he got a hit in his next at bat, or I never would have heard the end of it. Well, we're going from, I guess, I have no good segue here. We're just going to talk about leaving those poor kids alone. I felt as alone as my child probably felt when I ran out to the store. That's probably what happened. Because that we're talking about today. We are mainly talking about leaving our kids when we are, single parents. We're by ourselves so much. We have so much on our shoulders and often don't have a lot of support. And we've got to run out to grab something from the store. We've got to go get something from some medicine or something.
Yeah.
There's always something that you have to do, and you feel trapped sometimes, and you make that calculated risk.
Especially as a generation who was left alone all the time.
I know.
In the car, in the house, after school, being sent down the hill on your bike, whatever it might be.
Yes, exactly.
Go play in the woods. I think it's an interesting dynamic for us, because we're like, well, everything was fine for us.
What's funny is the guilt. You feel guilt, yes, but I didn't really feel as much guilt as I just felt fear of being found out.
Yeah,
like that was my biggest worry was, am I going to jail?
Yep. We lied for a really long time. When people would ask us where our kids were, it would just be like, oh, martial arts class. This is more so like when we would leave them alone to go for coffee. And like, at our local coffee shop where people knew us and knew we had kids. They're like, "Oh, where are the kids today?" We're like, "Oh, we left them playing with matches," and like make a joke of it.
I love it. It's a joke. Still true though.
Still true.
Joke and also true.
Still true.
I know.
They were very responsible kids.
Well, I think the legality of it is so interesting because I didn't want to know what the law was. I'm like, no, if I didn't know, then maybe it wasn't going to apply to me or something. So I never looked it up. I mean, did you look it up?
I definitely did because, you would occasionally see news stories. My ex-husband is a news reporter. And so like we read a lot of the news. And I remember around the time when our kids were young and we were leaving them at home safely with each other. They were fine. I remember reading stories where mom leaves her kid to go out at a bar or, something happens or a fire starts or a neighbor reports them or whatever it is. And I remember being really intrigued, am I judging them? Would I do the same thing? But is she doing anything wrong? Or is it just like because of her race or socioeconomic status or because she was drinking, then it's okay to arrest them. So let me find out what the laws are in New York, where I live, specifically around when you can leave your kids alone. And it turns out in New York, at least, there's no like real firm number. Other states do have ages where it's permissible to leave your kids alone. But I mean, the way that I thought about it was I was babysitting my infant brother at age 10. And by age 12, I was babysitting strangers' babies and being paid to do so. Like my mental number that I wanted to get to before I felt I'd be in the clear was like 12 for my kids. Like once they're 12, if anybody says anything, I'm like, come on.
That's child's play. 12.
I know.
I'm sitting here. I left my kid alone, to run to the store at like 5. Like I didn't have a choice.
Legally.
They hit 12 and now you don't have to lie about it anymore.
Exactly. Before that, I mean, we were leaving them. We did like train them up to being left alone because it wouldn't, my ex and I separated when they were babies as well. So from the time they were like 8 months until they were 2, I was a single parent then too with 2 babies. And I don't know if you've ever been a single parent to 2 babies, but it is not easy.
God.
Like it's miserable, especially when, once you transition to like milk in your bottle, like and you're out of milk and you need 16 ounces of milk every night. Like, there's no way that I can take 2 babies out to the store, even if it's a block away, bundle them up, get them in the stroller, go to the store, and like get back and have it be any kind of normal errand. So I would, make sure they were in their cribs, make sure they were safe, run to the store, and come right back. Or if like I had just finished the milk for their bedtime bottle, I'd wait till they were asleep and run out and come back. And it was, I do know of people who like would put their kids in bed and go to the bar across the street and bring the baby monitor and drink. And that is not something that I did or...
I'm judging you just for having friends that did that. My God.
Well, it was an acquaintance. She was also a bartender, which like probably says something.
Somehow makes it better? Just about the choices she's made in her life? Okay. Yeah.
But the times that we started leaving them alone, like when we would go for coffee in the mornings on a weekend and like they're watching cartoons and they want to be left alone anyway. And they're like 4 years old and they've got the iPad and we've taught them how to use FaceTime. Like they know that they can get in touch with us. They started eventually asking us, are you guys going to go out to coffee? Are you guys going to go out to coffee? Like, they were perfect. I mean, there was nothing that ever happened while we were away. So that we felt super comfortable. About leaving our kids. I don't know that every set of 4-year-olds or 6-year-olds or whatever could have the same kind of trust.
Well, you trained them though.
We did. Yeah.
I would almost argue that you train them, you do it little by little, you get them comfortable. Definitely. Because ultimately the biggest issue I feel is not they're going to run over to the oven, turn it on and explode the house.
Which is possible, but go on.
It's possible, but
they're probably not going to happen.
That's not what they're interested in once they get past a certain age. Yeah. Like, I think the ages you toughest to do is like between the age of like 1.5 and 4 is so tough. Because that's when they're getting into everything. They have no sense of consequences. that's where you're really like, I'm sorry, but we're bundling you up and you're coming with me to the bar and you're gonna, maybe I'll get a discount on my beer when they see who I'm with. But I'm like, once I got past 4, I'm like, what I'm most worried about going to jail and it having some effect on him, like him feeling left alone or like he can't get me. And when I think about what we have and the ways they can get in touch with us now, and we didn't have that.
No.
We were left alone all the time. And there was the home phone that they could call from a payphone or something.
Right.
But besides that, there was no way for them to know we were still alive.
Would you like to know a sad story? Poor little Lily, who was a latchkey kid.
Yeah, poor Lily.
I was always the last one to leave the house in the morning because I had an older brother and sister who would go to high school earlier than elementary school. And my mom sometimes would travel for work, but even if she wasn't traveling for work, she would leave before I did. So I had to like turn off the stove, make sure the lights are off, everything, and then lock the door. And as an 8-year-old, you don't always remember your key when you leave the house. And I remember being in like 3rd grade and sitting on like the front stoop of our house and not being able to get in and not being able to get in touch with anybody. And, the only phone numbers I could remember were like, home phone numbers. And my mom was at work and my dad wasn't answering. I finally did get through to a cousin who eventually came and got me. He's much older cousin, but I still remember that. Like you're just not able to get in touch with anybody.
No.
You're just on your own.
I was at school. I was in elementary school, and I broke my collarbone playing volleyball. What did they do? They just sent me home. I'm there like the nurse just sent me home, and I walk home, and my mom's gone. I mean, she was a stay-at-home mom at the time, but she was still not home.
Yeah, sure.
And she was gone all day.
School. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I sat on the stoop with my broken collarbone on my front porch thing, couldn't get in, waiting. I had to wait an hour, and she finally comes home and has to take me to the hospital. Like you could not get in touch with people. It's
and
just
our kids
amazing
don't have
to me.
That they get mine.
No,
can text me while I'm in a meeting at work. It's not even. It's not even comparable. Like the aloneness that we felt when we were left alone and the aloneness that they might feel, it's not even comparable.
So if you're watching this on YouTube where we post this, you probably noticed that we have completely changed our outfits and aged days, maybe even weeks.
I'd say months.
Months, maybe. Why is that? Well, I went back to go edit this piece and found half of it missing. So we are going to sit down and record what we had been talking about before. And I think it's going to go great. And it's going to be like nothing ever happened.
Listen, it's just like parenting. You mess up and then you try again the next day.
Yeah. And, I blame... I blame
yourself. You're
myself.
the one. You're the
Thank
problem.
you, Fran. Thank you. You got to answer that before I say something I regret.
Even though we trained our kids to be alone and nothing ever happened. Like, absolutely, I am for if your kid is asleep and you need to get something from the store fast. I live a block away from the deli. I live a block away from the grocery store. I know how long it takes me. And like the effort involved when they were toddlers or babies made it so that I would just wait until they were asleep and I knew it was safe and I would go and come back really quickly. Nothing ever happened. When they were older, like we would set them up with, Saturday morning cartoons and they were great and they were very good kids. So like, we based it on what we felt about them and what they were capable of. Different kids, different scenario. Like totally base this on your own kids. If you feel like they can be alone, great. If you feel like they can't be alone, listen to that. One time when they were plenty old enough to be alone, they were all, so my son and daughter are twins. So they were in 5th grade and in New York City, like you apply to middle school, you have, and then in the application process, like you have to tour these schools and go learn about them as if you were going to college. And their close friend who they'd been friends with since kindergarten, her dad, the middle school we were going to tour is, I think 3 blocks away from where we live now. And her dad brought her over and the 3 of us were all going to go together and look at the middle school. And like, they're all playing together. Like we were not at all worried about this. we went, we looked at the middle school, like nobody called us. We walked back in and the three of them were in the bathroom with all of the first aid things out. And they're like, don't worry, we took care of it. So
just what you want to hear. Don't worry, we took care of it.
My daughter has like a cut on her hand and they've like gauzed it up and like gotten all the tape and like bandaged everything up. I'm like, what the fuck did you do? And never in their lives had they ever played with knives, like nothing
Just
like this.
They waited till you were out of the building, and then
they
pulled
waited,
out the
and like
machete.
she grabbed a knife by the knife part, not the handle, and like she cut herself.
Always my fear with when they were little was that part. That like, do you understand the part you're supposed to grab?
And they
handled it.
They were almost in middle school. So when I tell you I was babysitting other people at their age, like that is how old they were. And they handled it. Like the friend pulled up puppy pictures on the internet and were like swiping through them as my son handled her wound.
Oh
and,
my God, they handled it like psychologically as well.
Totally psychologically. Like one was in charge of like making sure she was distracted enough and the other was in charge of like bandaging the wound. And it was clearly like not bad enough to need like emergency care. It was just like, oh, she got cut and it hurt really bad and they needed a Band-Aid. And we got home and we're like, why didn't you call us? We were literally 3 blocks away. You could have called us and we would have come right back and taken care of it. We're like, we took care of it.
You know what?
So,
that is the biggest thumbs up for your parenting you could give. You know,
I don't know.
When your
man.
kids,
I really wish they would
no,
have
it
called.
is. No, you feel like that, but you know, I don't know. When what I don't like is when the kids fix the problem in a really crappy way, and then you like don't even discover the problem for like 2 months, and then there's like, you know, something falls off there.
Something melted inside of the couch. Yeah,
exactly. You lift the cushion and there's like an entire, you know, half burned toy or something. But trying to take control and try to handle something, it's not a bad impulse. It's just teaching the line of like, well, there is a point where you would have been bleeding too much where you wouldn't have been able to handle it yourself.
That's true.
When would you have called? Like, and did you recognize that this was handleable, or did you not want to call because you wanted to show you could handle it?
I think they didn't want to call because they didn't want to get in trouble because they realized
and that's always it. They didn't want to get in trouble. That I don't like.
Yeah.
I don't like when they're like, we just don't want to get in trouble.
Yeah, I'm not going to pat myself on the back or my kids on the back here. Like they were trying not to get in trouble for sure. But we were like, you know, we're touring middle schools, and the very next couple of months they were going to be commuting by themselves to middle school. Like I don't think that we shouldn't have left them alone. They were literally about to get on public transportation on their own and like taking themselves back and forth to middle school. It is an age appropriate thing to do. I think that a lot of parents like now don't think that, you know.
Oh, it is tough. It's funny because a good friend of mine is from Finland, and we're going to have her on the show in a little bit because she does a whole thing. She has her own platform about self-sufficiency with kids and self-sufficiency because in her country, they're very self-sufficient. Her kids would walk through Helsinki to go to school at the age of like 6 and 7.
Yeah.
Here, she sent her kids to walk to school, and it was maybe like a quarter of a mile, and through other people's yards, not even down like a main street. And she got so much shit from all the other moms about doing that. Like she's the most negligent mother in the world. And she is like, I trust my kids. They are 8, 9 years old. They're not 2. Yeah. They should be able to walk to school. I walked to school from when I was in kindergarten. Like walking to school is something. Yeah. I mean, talk about leaving your kids alone. That's, you know, trusting your kid to get from point A to point B should be the very first level of trust you figure out.
And because I live in the city, I don't know if this is a thing in the suburbs still anymore or not. But by the time I was in 3rd grade, so 7 to 8, I think I was 7. I turned 8 in 3rd grade. I was given that little orange crossing guard thing, and I was in charge of crossing other children across the street and making cars stop. And we're not trusting 8-year-olds to walk to school?
We're not trusting them to walk through backyards to get to school.
That's insane. I mean, I don't necessarily think that trusting an 8-year-old to stop vehicular traffic is the right
I know.
move.
There's a balance.
There's a middle ground, yeah.
But at the same time, I'm like, shouldn't they? Like, why not? Like, it's not. I think we infantilize our kids a lot more now than
absolutely.
we were. And it's not because they can't handle it. It's because we're scared.
Because of us.
And it's like it's our own fear.
I don't know if you've ever seen it. There's a show on, that was a Japanese television show that followed toddlers.
Yes, I have seen that show. That is,
what is it called?
Where they like, as they go to school or they go to the store.
They give them tasks. Like they give a literal 2 or 3-year-old go buy the fish cakes. Yeah.
And they think they're just doing I have seen it, and it's genius.
Yeah.
Because it just, we really, that's why I want to do a whole episode about it, because nobody needs that relationship more than a single parent. Like you need to be able to have your kids be part of your support system, not in a way that makes, I think,
well, you need them to be self-sufficient to a certain
self-sufficient. That's the right word. Not,
and I think
system.
Not even just for, I think if you're married, this goes for you too. Like, I think that we are doing a massive disservice to this generation of children by not allowing them to be self-sufficient.
Well, I think we're dealing with 3 things. One is we don't trust our kids as much as we used to. On purpose or not, I just think that, like, is what you were saying about, know your kid. But I would also argue that it's not just about your gut. It's kind of like how when you're exercising, you can work out a little, you can always lift a little more weight than you think you can. Mm-hmm. I think your kids can probably handle a little more than you think they can. Totally. So it's like, I would say, take your gut and then, subtract a little, I think your kids can probably handle a little more than you think they can.
Yeah.
And then I also think we are in this echo chamber of fear as parents. It's everywhere. Like my Ring app constantly tells me, it's a Ring app. It's meant for ringing my doorbell. Right. And I'm constantly being told somebody's breaking into this house over here. Or is it like, it's just this. Really? Yeah. It's just like this fear social platform. They've turned it into a social platform of fear.
Oh, that sucks.
And you hear about, I hear people being like, oh, I don't let my kid walk to school because, they'll get kidnapped. And, there's sexual perverts everywhere. And there's this and that. And I'm like, I don't think there's any more of that now than there was when we were kids. I don't think it's any worse than it was. I think it's probably better.
It's
because
definitely.
There's so many, we have phones to contact our kids. There's so many ways to keep in touch. Yeah. Whereas I would disappear for like 5 hours in the middle of the day and my parents would have no idea where I was.
They wouldn't care.
They wouldn't care. They're like, he's coming back. If someone takes him. Good luck.
I think our generation is the reason for that, because like in the milk carton, like missing kids, the sensationalization of like the very, very, very rare stranger abductions, like the 80s, that was a big deal and it was a news generator. And I think that we are as parents are the victims of that kind of like sensationalism now.
And I think the third thing is that we seem to think that parenting is a sport that you can win at. And there's this sense of like, am I winning as a parent? Am I succeeding? I mean, it ties into the judgment part of it. And
I was going to say,
judging me.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is that, but like there is this, and maybe because it's the town I live in, but it feels like parenting is a little bit of a competitive sport here. And when I say like my son does something or handles something, like I can see sometimes in the parents' eyes that they immediately feel like they lost a point. And I'm like, we're not in a competition here. Like we're all hopefully great parents. And, I mess up just as much as you do. I succeed just as much as you do. But there's that sense of, I don't know, that sense of
judgment.
Am I failing? Yeah. Judgment. Am I failing when I let my kid walk? Just letting them walk to school. Is that me failing and not do I not care about my kids as much as other parents care about their kids? And that to me should be the most manageable, because you're doing it to yourself.
Well, it's so funny because as you're saying that, it is definitely, I was most afraid in leaving my kids alone of the judgment of others and not, can my kids handle this? Are they going to be okay? Because I knew that they would be. I wouldn't have done something that I thought endangered them. And what I was absolutely afraid of was like somebody finding out that I left my kid and then being like, oh, she must not love her kid. I'm better than her. Like whatever. Like I don't know. Yep. I didn't really imagine what they'd say. It was just a fear of the judgment, and then ultimately fear of like the jail. Law.
Yes, fear of jail.
Fear of jail, definitely. Because it didn't, like nobody, it doesn't seem anymore like we put trust in people knowing what's good for themselves or their kids, and that maybe is different than what is good for you or your kids, and being okay with that being different.
There's a difference between a choice and negligence. There's a difference, not every choice somebody makes that's best for their family is abuse. Like, I go back to that one story I read that was heartbreaking about this woman who had to go work, and she left her 13-year-old in the car, and her 13-year-old died. And, I go back to me sitting at 13 in my dad's car as he's up working for 3 hours, waiting for him to come back down.
Wait, how did the 13-year-old die?
She was older than you would expect, and she was just sitting there waiting for her mom to get done with her shift, and she died. And something happened with the car, shut off automatically, and she didn't realize, and it got really hot, and she fell asleep, something like that.
Yeah.
And, hopefully maybe somebody in the comments knows and can link to the story. But the bit that really stuck with me is when I would read comments on this story, all I feel when I see that story is just, this is a tragedy.
Yeah.
This isn't a crime. And other people were looking at this like this is a crime. And I'm like, what are you going to do? We don't live in Finland with their universal child care. We don't, you don't have a choice. We don't have that. If you don't have money for child care, guess what? Your kid's coming with you to work. And that should be fine. Like in certain work, that should be fine. I would sometimes go to work with my dad, and back when he would let me, and I'd sit with my toys in the corner of his office.
Yeah,
that's
same.
Fine. And I met your kids at work.
Yeah,
I remember. That's you brought them in, and that's when I first met them, and realized they were stars, and used them in a video that I still think
they
is one
are
of the
little stars.
funniest things we ever did. But like these stories are tragedies; they're not crimes, and we like push these all into the same bucket of crime, and it is what makes us feel this way.
Yeah.
Like, and I think it comes back to trust. You're right.
And it's like the fact that like even talking about this, like, can you leave your kids alone, or when can you leave your kids alone? The fact that that's a consideration that feels scandalous is kind of crazy to me.
It's crazy. It's crazy. Well, we're going to leave you with that thought then, that it's a scandal we're even talking about this. And you guys should all feel judged that you were worried enough to even listen. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe. Leave a like or a crazy comment. We'd love to hear from you, and see you again soon.